Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Wellness Wednesday. And today I'm super excited because this is the Psychology Month. And for the Psychology Month, we are going to discuss all about psychonutrition. Now, psychonutrition is an extremely important and an exciting branch of science that's coming forth. Psychonutrition studies how your mental health will affect the food choices that you make, but also how the food choices that you make is going to affect your mental health, right? And Ayurveda has a lot to say about mental health as well as your physical body connection as well as the diet. So we are going to combine all of this in the entire month. One interesting fact that most people don't believe or they don't want to think about is, often we talk about, oh, I'm binging because I feel sad, or I'm downing some chocolate bars because I feel depressed. But not a lot of people think about, that certain foods that you eat on a daily basis are triggering your anxiety, are triggering your depression. And another interesting fact that I have seen, especially because I see a lot of children in my practice, especially for food sensitivity testing, that children could be sensitive to certain kinds of foods. Children could be extremely sensitive to some of the triggers that we're going to talk about today, and that can be seen as anxiety, depression, ADHD like behaviors in children, right? So cleaning up the diet is the best thing that you can do, and today I'm going to talk about the 12 foods that can worsen your anxiety and depression. And what I'm saying is not just something, from like my mind, or just because everybody says sugar is bad for you. What I'm saying is actually backed by tons of research, right? So, number one thing, as I said, one of the food that is going to really trigger, really going to affect your anxiety and depression is sugar, right? So, there was a study done in 2015 on postmenopausal women where they saw that there was a likelihood of more increase of added sugars, and that also increased the chances of depression. And depression, diabetes, dementia often can go hand in hand. So it is a fact that when you're depressed, you are going to eat foods that are rich in, easy carbs that will help you make the serotonin. But at the same time, if you're eating these cheap carbs, if you're eating these refined foods, if you're eating tons of sugar, it is going to trigger your depression, right? So you have to be mindful, and you have to lower the consumption of sugar. So number one thing that is going to trigger anxiety as well as depression is sugar. And sugar, refined sugar, is something that can act as uh, an oxidant in your system. Too much sugar can damage your brain. And one of the things, that's why, insulin, high levels of or low levels of insulin or high insulin insensitivity is linked to diabetes, and eventually that's also linked to dementia, right? So number one thing to take out of your diet right now is take out any of the refined sugars, especially like the white sugar. Sugar comes in different forms, whether we talk about cane sugar or cane extract or evaporated cane syrup, they're all the same. Number one thing that's affecting you, your brain, is sugar. The second one is called aspartame, which is a common artificial sweetener. Aspartame can be found in your gum, aspartame can be found in your diet pop. So when you're guzzling, different cans of diet pop, you are not doing yourself a favor, because it is just as bad as refined sugar is, right? So aspartame is known to block serotonin, which is your feel good hormone, a neurotransmitter. And also it can create certain changes in your neurology, which is going to trigger headaches, it can trigger insomnia, it can also trigger depression. So aspartame, again, found in your gum, aspartame found in different, sugar free pops or sugar free candies, is not good for you. Hi Ritu, hi Kamlesh. Today we are talking about 12 foods that can worsen your anxiety and depression. The third one is alcohol, right? So alcohol, again, is something that will deplete a lot of your vitamins, especially vitamin B1. And there is also something called Wernicke's encephalopathy, or uh, Korsakoff psychosis, which is linked to a psychosis. It's the psychosis in people who have tons of, or who are struggling with alcohol, right? So alcohol is going to deplete your vitamins, especially B1, and it will trigger, different conditions. It will create the inflammation in your brain cells. It will create lots of oxidative damage on your body as well as your brain. It can affect your memory. It is going to trigger anxiety or depression, right? And this is one of the reasons, if you're drinking out of depression, the alcohol is going to make you feel even worse. It's going to lower your mood, and it's not good for you. The fourth one is something everyone abuses, right? The fourth one is something everyone loves, and I'm saying abuses is because you take too much of it. So the fourth one I'm talking about is coffee or caffeine, right? Caffeine or coffee in small amounts is good for you. It's good for your health. That has been studied by a lot of research, but too much caffeine is not good for you. And some people are especially sensitive to caffeine, right? So in my clients, when I do the testing, I often find caffeine as one of the common triggers for anxiety. So avoiding too much caffeine is a good idea if you are struggling with anxiety or depression. If you struggle with anxiety, the number one thing to start taking out of your diet right now is caffeine, right? If you are low in energy, if you have issues with your adrenals, number one thing to take out of your diet is coffee or caffeine. It's going to tax your adrenal glands. That's going to again make you fatigued, and eventually you're going to be frustrated, depressed, and anxious as well. Right. So, Ritu, that's what I'm saying. See, if you are struggling with low mood, low energy, cutting out the caffeine is good. Avoiding daily caffeine is something you should do, especially if you are struggling with low mood. Right. So, if you don't have any mood disorders, with kapha, sometimes because of the sluggishness, it's good to get them in action, like by drinking a little bit of coffee. But coffee can often trigger anxiety. So, for people struggling with anxiety, especially, cutting out the caffeine is fantastic. Number five, I'm going to discuss are something we all love, like French fries, right? So, French fries or any kind of fried food, fried chicken, something that's fast food. So, what's found in this fast food is hydrogenated oils as well as trans fats, right? While fat is fantastic for your brain is entirely fat. Trans fats and hydrogenated oils are bad for you. So trans fats are fats that are not found in the nature, and they are created when any kind of oil undergoes a heat transformation by applying extremely high heat, right? And this is formed during the process called hydrogenation, where you can take an oil. An example is when making margarine. You take an oil and you pass through it hydrogen, and that will change certain bonds in the oil, and it will make it solid rather than liquid at room temperature. And such hydrogenated oils as well as such trans fats are going to create a lot of impact on your brain, and it will potentially contribute to depression, right? So what happens is, because of all these foods, they have a tendency to clog up your arteries, and not just your heart arteries but also your brain arteries, right? Hydrogenated fats are not good for you. They are going to create more oxidative damage inside your entire body, and it is linked to both anxiety as well as depression. Now, number 6 is something that, if you have a child with anxiety, or if you have a child that's struggling with depression, this is something you need to make sure they absolutely do not touch, and that is artificial coloring, right? So artificial coloring can be found in a lot of candy. It can be found in different kinds of pop. It can be found in fruit juices. It can be found in those smoothie pouches that children have. It can be found in cupcakes, right? So any kind of cakes and pastries with the beautiful colors, those will have artificial colors, and artificial colors will impact your emotions. Artificial colors have been studied to create anxiety, depression, ADHD, and they will also create a lot of behavioral changes, right? So, when it comes to sugar and artificial colors, I have testimonies of so many of my clients who talk about their kids that as soon as they started cutting out those artificial sugars as well as artificial colors, the the child's behavior almost normalized, from hyperactivity or high levels of anxiety or depression or anger, tantrum related issues. They were all resolved by simply changing the diet, right? So if you have a child with any kind of behavioral issues, if you have child with any kind of mental health issues like anxiety, depression, ADHD, please cut out the sugar and the artificial colors. Those are the number one and two things to completely cut out the diet. Now, number eight is high sodium foods, right? So the one thing that I have found, when I moved from India to Canada, is the chips are way saltier here, right? If you open a can of soup and if you look at the can of the soup, like the sodium content is extremely high. So high amounts of sodium can not only give you high blood pressure, but that can affect your neurology, that can affect the way your neurotransmitters work, and that can trigger anxiety as well as depression, right? So high amounts of sodium will change the electrolyte balance of the body, and this extra sodium is going to disrupt your neurology. So often, it can change your immune system as well. But directly when you look at the research material, high sodium levels is also linked to depression. Now we go to number eight. So we've talked about seven different things. That was the number eight, and that is processed foods. So any food that has been processed can be convenient for us, but it's not good for your body or brain, right? So if you're looking at those deli meats, or if you are looking at baked croissants or bagels, like these are refined foods, these are processed foods, right? They can trigger inflammation in your entire body, including your brain, and they will impact your behavior. They can always impact different factors like anxiety as well as depression. So avoiding any kind of processed foods is important for, especially when you're somebody who's struggling with anxiety or depression. Now, number nine on my list is canned food. So we talked about processed foods, we talked about sodium. Now, when we look at canned foods, there is something called bisphenol A or BPA, which is found in the inner lining of the canned foods. And especially if you're using something like tomatoes, which are sour and tart, so anything acidic is going to leach this BPA inside the food that you're eating. And there has been research done that BPA, which is a chemical used in canned food liners and plastic containers, is going to throw off your mood stabilizing neurotransmitters in your brain. So, usually, it has also been studied that children who are exposed to BPA in early childhood have anxiety issues, right? So, avoiding canned foods, if you like your tomatoes pre made, just get the bottled ones instead and avoid canned foods. Now, because we're talking about children, another thing that they commonly have is refined fruit juices, right? I often see clients and I will ask them what the child will have in the morning, and they'll be like, oh, it's a glass of orange juice or apple juice, right? So, whole fruits are going to have fiber, right? And this fiber is going to slow down that sugar absorption in the body. When a juice which is devoid of fiber, often it's loaded with artificial color, it's going to trigger too much activity in the brain, and that will be seen as anxiety, restlessness, inability to focus, inability to concentrate, inability to listen to different things, right? So taking the refined fruit juices, which is number 10, is extremely important. Now we go to number 11, and that is wheat bran, right? So, in a lot of seniors, especially people who struggle with constipation, or I've known people to go for wheat bran, right? So wheat bran has really good fiber content. It has a nutty flavor. So it's really something that people will have on a daily basis, like a bran muffin, or you can just use wheat bran to help get rid of constipation. But wheat bran is a scratchy fiber, which is going to trigger conditions like IBS. Also, one thing you have to realize that whenever you are processing the food, right? It is going to be devoid of minerals like zinc, which are necessary for neurotransmitter function. And wheat bran also is high in phytic acid, which is going to stop you from absorbing different minerals, right? So often, if you are a senior and if you are struggling with anxiety, if you're struggling with depression, one thing that you need to get rid of is wheat bran, right? And try to have fiber through natural foods. You can always add more leafy greens in the cooked form, and those will be fantastic for you. They will give you your vitamins, they will give you your minerals, and they will also protect your brain. Now we go to number 12. So, number 12 today, which is something that is going to trigger your anxiety, which is going to trigger depression, is fermented foods. Now, I know fermented foods are touted to be the best thing for you. They are touted to be really amazing for your gut health, but not everybody can handle fermented foods, especially if you are someone who's struggling with high levels of histamine, right? So, high levels of histamine can be seen as digestive issues. There could be bloating, there could be rashes on the skin. You can have a constant sneezing or a constant runny nose or a sore throat. So these will be signs of high histamine in the system. Rashes, patches, wheals, reddish patches. So they're all signs of high histamine. And if you have high histamine in your system already, fermented foods are going to trigger more of this histamine release and give you more histamine, because fermented foods naturally contain histamine, right? So it is also studied that there is increased anxiety as well as panic attacks in people who have high histamine. High histamine not only affects your physical body, but it will affect your behavior, it will affect your emotions as well. And that is one of the reasons why staying away from too much fermented foods, no matter how healthy they're touted to be, like sauerkraut, kombucha, kimchi, is good if you are struggling with anxiety or depression, right? So today's topic was the 12 foods that are triggering your anxiety and depression. Now let me know which one is the one thing that you absolutely avoid, right? Which is the one thing that you absolutely avoid, and which of the following are you planning to avoid? So thank you once again for watching. This is the month, as I was mentioning, we are doing a whole psychology month. So, this entire month, we will be talking about psychonutrition, how food is going to affect your mood, and how certain nutrients as well as anti nutrients are going to impact your mental health. So, thanks for watching. I'm just going to say a quick hi to Fareed. Bijal is here, Amrita is here, George is here. So thank you for watching this live, guys. Let me know if you have any further questions. Bye for now.